In the remote town of Nimo, nestled in the northeastern central region of West Africa, there lived a man named Zen. Zen hails from Oko, the smallest village in Nimo. He was a figure of respect and admiration, tall and dark in complexion. He was known for his bravery and friendly nature, endearing him to all his neighbors. Despite being a traditionalist and a polygamist, his integrity and kindness made him well liked. His large family consisted of 3 wives and 18 children, 7 boys and 11 girls. Zen's compound was a testament to his status, featuring 4 houses, each maintained by one of his wives. He lived in the newest house with his youngest wife, Teresa, but kept a separate room in each house to maintain his fixed weekly routine with his wives. Each wife was entitled to be with him for 7 days a month, while he chose what to do with the remaining 7 days. One of the buildings was reserved for his visitors and relatives who wished to visit them. Among all of Zen's children, his youngest was the bravest. Her name was Esben. Esben is the closest child to Zen, and she was 6 years old. Her mother, Teresa, who was Zen's last wife, gave birth to Esben 8 years after closing up childbearing. Esben was a gifted child who possessed wisdom beyond her years. As an infant, she did things that ordinarily a child of her age wouldn't have done. She was quick to think, had good initiative, and always wanted to do bigger things beyond her age. Her unique and pleasant character made her beloved by everyone in the family and the neighborhood. Esben's mother, Teresa, kept watching her daughter closely because she knew there is something unexplainable about her. She was so different from her other kids. One afternoon, while Teresa was having her siesta, she had a dream. In that dream, 2 men were dragging and claiming ownership over her last child, Esben. Although none succeeded before she woke up, Teresa became afraid and worried about her dream. She was afraid for her daughter's life and began to seek spiritual help for her protection. She consulted a diviner. The diviner's words sent chills down her spine. "Be careful with Esben," he warned. "The gods are interested in the destiny of that child." Teresa's worry deepened. "The gods are interested in my daughter," she wondered. "For what? Why? How?" She recalled the 2 men in her dream and pondered over their identity. Were they really gods? She asked herself repeatedly. And both were dragging and claiming ownership of my child. Why would they do that? What for? This must be a serious matter. When Teresa got home, she became restless while waiting for her husband to return. Esben and her siblings had gone to the neighborhood to play. On returning, the kids saw their mother outside and ran to hug her. But Esben quickly noticed her mother wasn't in a good mood. "Mother, is everything alright?" Esben asked, her voice laced with concern. "Yes, Esben, everything is alright. But you looked worried. What is the matter, Mom?" she asked. "Esben, I am not in the mood to answer questions," Teresa replied, knowing how curious Esben could be. "Mom, you are worried about me," Esben said. Teresa's eyes sparkled like a lighter. "Worried? No, I am not worried," said Teresa, although she was worried. "Yes, you are. Please don't be worried about me. I am fine," Esben assured her. Teresa began to wonder how Esben knew she was worried about her. "This is becoming more serious than I could handle," she said as she took the children inside. It was Saturday evening, and it was getting dark. She had already prepared dinner for her family, so she asked the older kids to take their showers while she bathed the younger ones. She served dinner to her kids, but couldn't eat because she lost her appetite. The burden in her heart was too heavy for her to bear. The kids had finished having their dinner when Zen returned from work. Teresa must discuss the outcome of her visit to the diviner with him, but will be constrained. It was the turn of the second wife to be with him, and he is a man who respects boundaries so much. This situation needs his urgent attention. Teresa murmured to herself, I must find a way to see him tonight. She was contemplating how to penetrate her husband when Esben interrupted her thoughts. Complaining that she couldn't sleep, she begged for bedtime stories, but her mother wasn't in the mood for bedtime stories, and she began to cry when her mother turned down her request. Esben, I am not in the mood for bedtime stories, Teresa yelled at her and pushed her out. Esben started crying the more. What is it? Zen thundered as he was coming out from the bathing room. Esben ran to her dad, hugged him tight, and increased her cries. What is it, my dear? Asked Zen as he carried Esben in his arms. Mother refused to tell us bedtime stories, answered Esben. It's okay. I will be your storyteller tonight. Just give me a moment to dress up. I will be with you shortly. Esben ran to tell her siblings that daddy was coming to give them bedtime stories. Welcome, sir, greeted the second wife. Thanks, my dear. How are you and the kids? He asked. We are fine. The kids have all gone to bed, she answered. So early? Asked Mr. Zen as he was heading to his room to dress up. He was on a bathing towel. The second wife had come to invite him to the table because his dinner was set. Zen excused himself from her because he wanted to put Esben to bed. But her mother can always put her children to bed, she complained. Zen assured her he would take little time, but she left for her apartment murmuring about his closeness with Esben and that he could ignore her because of Esben. Teresa thanked her God for using Esben to solve her problem. She was hoping Zen would fulfill his promise to Esben. Esben and her siblings were expectantly waiting for their storyteller to arrive. They were glad to have their dad telling them bedtime stories because he used to give them interesting stories. Esben pleaded for 2 stories when their dad arrived, but he wouldn't oblige the request because he didn't want to keep his second wife waiting for long. I will give you just 1 story tonight and we'll continue another time. Esben's mother, Teresa, came in and paid homage to him, requesting to speak with him about a situation that required urgent attention. Can it wait till tomorrow morning? I don't want to overstay here, he said. She agreed to have the discussion the next morning. Zen continued the story, telling the children about a poor man named Ekene who lived in a small, desolate village at the edge of a vast forest. Ekene's life had been filled with hardship and sorrow. His beloved wife, Afoma, had fallen gravely ill. Despite his best efforts, Ekene could not afford to take her to the hospital. The village doctor, a kind but elderly man, did what he could, but his limited skills and resources were not enough. One cold night, Afoma succumbed to her illness, leaving Ekene heartbroken and alone to care for their 2 young children, Ozima and Alema. Ekene's days were consumed by toil and worry. Each morning, before the sun rose, he will leave his humble home and walk to the market in the nearby town. There, he will seek any menial work available, carrying goods, cleaning stores, or helping merchants set up their wares. Despite his hard work, the mega earnings he brought home were barely enough to feed his children, let alone paying for their schooling. One particular day, as Ekene was returning from the market, he heard a sound that stopped him in his tracks. It was a melody so beautiful and haunting that it seems to come from another world. Intrigued, he followed the sound through a narrow path that led off the main road. There, sitting by the roadside, was a tiny being, no bigger than Ekene's hand, playing a flute made of polished wood. The being was delicate, with shimmering wings and eyes that sparkled like stars. Its music was enchanting, filling Ekene's heart with a strange sense of peace he hadn't felt since Afoma's death. Who are you? Ekene asked, captivated by the tiny creature's presence. I am Lizzie, a princess of the forest, the being replied in a melodious voice. I play this flute to bring joy and peace to those who hear it. Ekene, struck by a sudden idea, thought that if he could capture Lizzie, he could sell her enchanting music to make enough money to change his family's fortune. Gently, he held Lizzie in his palm and examining him as he walked home. Lizzie did not resist. She made herself comfortable in Ekene's palm. When Ekene returned home, he showed the tiny being to Ozima and Alima. He put her in a box and warned them not to open it. No matter what you hear, do not open this box while I am away, he instructed sternly. The children nodded, though their curiosity was piqued. The next morning, Ekene left for the market, carrying with him the hope that he could get enough money and buy a cage for Lizzie to keep her music all to himself. However, as soon as he was out of sight, the children heard the faint sound of a flute emanating from the box. Unable to resist the enchanting music, they opened the box, and they were delighted to see Lizzie emerge, her tiny form glowing with a soft light. "Will you play for us?" Ozima asked eagerly. Lizzie nodded and began to play a lively tune on her flute. The children danced and sang, their laughter echoing through the small house. They played until they were exhausted, their faces flushed with joy. "Now we need fresh air," Lizzie said, her eyes twinkling. She led the children outside, where the cool breeze refreshed their tired bodies. "Do you know of any thick forest around here?" she asked. The children nodded. "Our father crosses a thick forest daily on his way to work," Ozima said. "Could you please show me the way to the forest?" But none of them knew the way to the forest. Lizzie's expression turned wistful, and she began to cry softly. "Why are you crying?" Ozima asked, concerned. "I miss my mother," Lizzie replied. "I am very hungry, and only my mother can feed me." "It's a pity we can't help you," Alima said, his voice filled with sympathy. "Where is your mother?" Lizzie asked. "Our mother is no longer with us," Ozima said softly, tears welling up in her eyes. "She died 2 years ago." Lizzie looked at the children with compassion. "I know your mother," she said gently. "I recognized this family the moment I entered your home." "How?" the children chorused. "You wouldn't understand even if I told you," Lizzie replied. "But when I get home, I will meet your mother and tell her how kind you have been to me." "Where will you see her?" "Our mom has died," Alima repeated, puzzled. Lizzie's eyes filled with tears again. "If you could take me to my home, where I have complete musical instruments, my siblings and I could play for you," she said hopefully. The children, eager to help but unsure how, nodded. "But we don't know the way," Ozima admitted. When Ekene returned home that evening, he heard Lizzie's sobs and the children's soothing words. Learning of Lizzie's longing for her mother, Ekene's heart softened. He remembered how much his children had missed their mother since her death. He decided to help Lizzie find her way home, hoping to ease her sorrow. "Can you find your way home from where I picked you up?" Ekene asked Lizzie. Lizzie shook her head. "I lost my way and had been wandering around there. But if you can take me deep into the forest, my family will find me with the help of my flute," she explained. It was already dark, but Ekene was determined to help Lizzie, who had fallen homesick and hungry. He picked up Lizzie and set off towards the forest, his mind filled with memories of Afoma and the pain of losing her. As he entered the forest, the trees loomed tall and forbidding, their shadows stretching long in the twilight. Ekene walked deeper into the forest, the sounds of the night growing louder around him. He felt strange sensations all over his body, a mix of fear and anticipation. "Stop here," Lizzie instructed, her voice trembling. She began to play her flute, the melody echoing through the trees. Soon, shapes began to emerge from the darkness. Lizzie's family appeared, their forms ethereal and glowing in the moonlight. Ekene knelt and lowered Lizzie, who began to run forward to meet her family. Ekene could hear Lizzie speaking to them, her voice filled with gratitude, and she narrated how Ekene saved her. Meanwhile, Ekene was afraid for his life and what will become of his children if anything happens to him. His family has abandoned him long ago because he was poor and couldn't meet up with their standards. Despite the darkness and different insect sounds emanating from the forest, Ekene could hear a gentle voice spoke to him. "Thank you for saving our daughter. We owe you a great debt." Lizzie returned to Ekene, handing him a small, intricately carved flute. "Blow this flute when you need money, but only at midnight," she instructed. "Be careful on your way home and do not speak to anyone you encounter. Also greet my friends for me. Their mom is hailing them too." Ekene nodded, bade Lizzie and her family goodbye, and began his journey out of the forest. The path was crooked and he could barely see. His heart pounded as he navigated the dark woods, his thoughts turning to his children waiting at home. Suddenly, he heard a voice asking what he was doing in the forest at such a late hour. Remembering Lizzie's instruction, he did not respond. He turned to see who was speaking but saw no one. His fear mounted as he heard a horrific noise. Instinctively, he caught a young palm tree and placed the plume in his mouth and held it vertically to shield himself from the evil that roamed the night. He stood behind the palm tree until the noise faded away. When he finally reached home, he found his children asleep, their faces peaceful. He took a bath, prepared food, woke them up to eat, and put them back to bed. Exhausted, he entered his room, closed the door, and began to blow the flute. To his amazement, coins began to fall from the flute. Ekene collected the money, tears of gratitude streaming down his face. This flute was not just a means to escape poverty. It was a symbol of hope and a reminder of the kindness he had shown. Days turned into weeks, and Ekene's fortune improved. He bought a shop in the market, started his own business, and his business flourished. He was able to send Ozima and Alima to school, and for the first time in their life, they began to dream of a better future. Despite their improved circumstances, Ekene never forgot the little being who brought such a miraculous change into their lives. Every midnight, he would blow the flute, but only enough to cover their needs, never for greed. He taught his children the importance of compassion, integrity, and the value of helping others. One day, a poor beggar came to Ekene's shop asking for food. Remembering his struggles, Ekene gave the beggar a generous meal and plenty of money. The beggar, moved by Ekene's kindness, blessed him and left with tears of gratitude in his eyes. This act of kindness reminded Ekene of the time he had helped Lizzie, and he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. As days went by, he began to wax great in his business. He bought plenty of lands and raised the most beautiful house. He began to use his wealth to help the poor. As time passed, Ozima and Alima grew into compassionate and responsible young adults. Ozima, inspired by her mother's illness and the struggles her family faced, decided to become a doctor. She dedicated her life to helping the poor and the sick, offering her services for free to those who could not afford medical care. Alima, on the other hand, became a teacher, determined to educate the children in their village and instill in them the values of kindness and empathy that his father had taught them. Ekene, now an old man, watched his children with pride. He knew that despite the hardship they had faced, they had grown up into remarkable individuals who made a positive impact on the world. Often, he would sit by the window playing the flute Lizzie had given. The melody, a constant reminder of the miraculous night that had changed their lives forever. One evening, as Ekene played the flute, a familiar melody drifted through the air. He lifted up and saw Lizzie standing at the edge of the compound, smiling. She approached him and said, "You have honored our gift well. Your kindness and integrity have brought great blessings to your family." Tears welled up in Ekene's eyes as he thanked Lizzie. "Your gift saved us," he said. "It taught us the true meaning of compassion and gratitude." Lizzie nodded. "Your story will inspire others," she said. "Remember, the greatest magic lies in the goodness of the heart." With that, Lizzie vanished into the night. leaving Ekene with a heart full of gratitude and a life full of love. The story of the poor man and the magical flute became a cherished tale in the village, a reminder of the power of kindness and the miracle it can bring. Years later, Ozima, now a renowned doctor, she would remind them that no matter how difficult life might seem, kindness and compassion could bring about unexpected miracles. Alima also shared the story with his students, teaching them that true wealth lay not in material possessions, but in the goodness of one's heart. One summer, during the village annual festival, Ozima and Alima decided to honor their father by sharing the story with the entire community. They gathered everyone around the old tree at the center of the village and began to recount the tale of Ekene, the magical flute, and the tiny bee named Lizzie. At the end of the story, Ozima held up the flute that had brought their family so much joy and prosperity. This flute, she said, is a symbol of the kindness and integrity our father taught us. It reminds us that no matter how small an act of kindness may seem, it can create ripples that change lives. The villagers cheered and applauded, their hearts warmed by the tale, inspired by Ekene's story. They resolved to carry forward the legacy of kindness and compassion. They began organizing community events to help the needy, sharing their resources and supporting each other in times of difficulty. As the years went by, the village prospered. It became known as a place where kindness was valued above all, where neighbors supported each other, and where the story of Ekene and the magical flute was passed down from generation to generation. Ekene lived to see his children's dream come true. He watched as Ozima opened a free clinic in the village, providing medical care to those who couldn't afford it. He saw Alima's students grow into compassionate and educated young adults, ready to make a positive impact on the world. In his final moments, Ekene often sits in his favorite chair by the window, playing the flute and reflecting on his life's journey. He felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the little being who had entered his life and transformed it. He knew that his legacy of kindness and compassion will live on through his children and the countless lives they touched. One peaceful morning, as the sun set and the village was bathed in a golden glow, Ekene closed his eyes for the last time, a contented smile on his face. He had lived a life filled with love, kindness, and purpose. His spirit, now free, joined his wife, Afoma. The flute, now a treasured family heirloom, was passed down to Ozima and then to Alima, each generation honoring its legacy and the values it represents. The story of Ekene and the magical flute continued to inspire and remind people that even in the darkest times, a single act of kindness could light the way to a brighter future. Zen had not finished the story. The children drifted off to sleep and he left the room. He apologized to his second wife for keeping her waiting and asked for his food, but there was no response. She had also slept while waiting on the sofa. Zen held her hand and began to squeeze her fingers gently. He began to appease her emotions. She opened her eyes and sat up. When she opened her mouth to talk, Zen quickly covered her mouth to stop her from uttering any word because he knew she slept off in anger. He apologized to her again, which made her swallow her words. She made straight to the dinner table to dish out his food. Zen followed her to the table, held her arms, put her to himself, and apologized the third time. She gave him a hug to show acceptance of the apologies. Zen had a good meal as he enjoyed himself with his wife. Meanwhile, Teresa could not sleep. She was worried about her urgent matter and Zen's response. She stared at the ceiling, wondering what the morning would bring. The sun barely rose when Zen arrived at Teresa's room. She welcomed him with a greeting, but her countenance portrayed a sleepless night. "How was your night?" Zen asked. I couldn't sleep, she replied. Why not? He whose house is on fire doesn't chase rats, she said solemnly. Zen sat down by her side, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. What is the matter? He asked. She explained her concern about the dream she had, in which two men were dragging Esben away. The diviner's cryptic message had only added salt to her injury. What does the diviner say? He asked. The diviner said we should be careful in how we treat and handle that girl, because she is sacred, and that both gods are interested in the destiny of the child. Zen's mind raced with questions. Which means the two men you dreamt about were gods? He asked. I don't know, Teresa said, looking even more worried. I am getting more confused as I kept thinking about it. Zen pondered on the implication of the diviner's message. Who are these gods? He muttered to himself. And why are they interested in the destiny of my child? He paced the room, his mind troubled by the revelation. If the two gods are quarreling over my daughter, it means they will soon start fighting, because one of them would have to win this fight to claim the child for himself. And before the battle would have ended, my family would have been terribly injured, he lamented. Zen was a traditionalist who believed in the traditional way of worship. He doesn't go to church or believe in Christian doctrines. Amadioha, the god of his ancestors, was the name he revered. I must travel to consult a big oracle, he said, because soon, if care is not taken, terrible things will begin to happen in my family. I have to commence on this trip immediately. He was preparing for the trip, collecting important items, when Esben entered his room with coconut. Dad, take this coconut, you will need it. Where did you get it from? He asked. Under my mother's bed. Please take it, you will need it. Zen was surprised but grateful. Okay, but ensure you tell your mother about it before she starts to look for it. Zen bid his family goodbye, leaving them with no explanation for his urgent trip, but he promised to return soon. He turned to his first wife and said, please take care of the family. He instructed the other wives to adhere strictly to her instructions until he came back. On the journey, Zen's mind was filled with questions, and his heart was heavy. He felt he was embarking on a monstrous journey of dangers and uncertainties. However, he was determined to uncover the mystery behind his daughter's destiny and end his family's forthcoming troubles. Zen was deep in thought as he trekked towards the neighboring town. The problem at hand consumed his mind. He lost in thoughts that he didn't notice the people hailing and greeting him along the way. As he walked, he almost passed one of his elder kingsmen, Mr. Ondo. Noticing Zen's unusual mood, Ondo stopped and called out loudly, Okriko. The familiar nickname jolted Zen out of his cave. He turned to see Ondo standing there, concern etched on his face. Zen quickly returned to him and greeted the older man. Good morning, sir. I am very sorry for not noticing you when I passed. Ondo looked at him closely. Hope all is well, Okriko. All is well, sir, Zen replied. Are you sure? Yes, sir. All is well. This is not you at all. Is anything the matter? Ondo asked. Oh, no, not at all. All is well, sir. What about your wives and children? They are all fine, sir. Ondo needed more convincing. Something must be wrong because this is quite unlike you. Why are you carrying a travel bag? It looks like you are traveling to the city. Zen nodded. Yes, actually, I am traveling to the city. I have a big need that has lingered for so long, and I think now is the right time to fulfill it. What is that, Okoliko? Ondo asked, coming closer to him. I have been longing and dreaming of buying a car, and I think now is the right time to buy it. But what bothers me is getting a car that can contain quite some numbers. because I have a big family. This is good news, Ondo said. I suggest you buy a Peugeot salon. It will be of greater value than all those other small cars. It can comfortably carry all your family members with the mothers lapping the smaller children. It's alright, sir. Let me go to the city first. Go well, my brother. May the gods be with you, said Ondo. Zen responded as both shook hands and parted ways. As Zen continued on his journey, he pondered on Ondo's words. May the gods be with me. Which gods? The gods that want to cause trouble in my family. Why can't he just say, may Amadioha be with me? A voice interrupted his thoughts. But you said amen. Zen looked around but didn't see anyone talking to him. I said amen so that the old man would not feel humiliated. I am uncomfortable with that prayer because I don't know the gods he was talking about. The voice spoke again. The next time you hear a pronouncement against your belief, be sure not to acknowledge it. Zen looked around again but saw no one. He wondered at the mystery of an invisible voice speaking to him. As he wandered in his thoughts, a sudden cry from a nearby forest jolted him. It was the voice of a woman screaming for help. Zen quickly ran into the forest, following the direction of the screams. He found a woman lying in a pool of her blood. Seeing Zen rushing towards her, she raised her voice again. Please help me. My baby is coming. My baby is coming. My baby is coming. And her voice faded away. Zen looked at her with deep pity, but couldn't figure out what to do with a woman in labor in the thick forest. What could have brought this woman here, he asked. How can I help her now? As he stood there, he noticed blood pumping out from under her wrapper. She thought of carrying the woman to the roadside, hoping to find a passerby who could help. Bending down to take her, he encountered a branch blocking his way. He cut it off and threw it aside. Gather some leaves of that branch you threw away. As he bent down again, the voice spoke once more. Gather some leaves of that branch you threw aside. Squeeze and drop the water in her mouth. He stood up and looked around but saw no one. Growing uncomfortable with the invisible presence, he questioned the voice. What is the essence of dropping the water from these leaves into this woman's mouth? Be fast if you don't want to lose her and her baby. The tree is a monstrous herb. The herb will enable the baby come out easily without the mother's push. Zen quickly plucked some leaves, squeezed them with his palm, and dropped the water into the woman's mouth. She wasn't swallowing because she had lost consciousness. He held her neck up, ensuring more water dropped into her mouth. He also opened her eyes and applied some drops there. He hurriedly plucked more herbs and put them in his bag. He then carried the woman struggling through the thick forest. As he did so, the baby emerged crying. Zen slowed down and carefully gathered her wrapper tight to prevent the baby from slipping out. The path had many blockages, making it difficult for him to carry her out. Finally, he made it to the road. He carefully laid the woman by the roadside, ensuring she lay sideways to keep her from lying on her baby. The woman was still breathing, though unconscious, and the baby was crying. Suddenly, Zen heard the sound of a car approaching. Excited that help had finally arrived, he flagged down the driver. The driver asked what was wrong with her. A woman in labor, Zen replied, his voice strained from the woman's weight and the tension of the situation. She needs to get to the hospital immediately. Oh no, I can't help you. I don't want her blood to stain my new car, the driver said before driving off, leaving Zen feeling helpless and frustrated. His condition deteriorating rapidly. The woman was bleeding profusely and time seemed to be slipping away from them. He looked around frantically, his mind swelling with panic when suddenly he heard a voice. What is wrong? A woman's voice called out from nearby. Zen turned around to see a woman approaching. Relief washed over him. He rushed to her, words tumbling out in his haste. This woman is in labor and has given birth, but she's unconscious and losing a lot of blood. The baby needs help. Without hesitation, the woman ran to the unconscious mother. She tore off part of her wrapper to use as makeshift delivery aid. She demanded for a knife or any sharp object. Then handed her his penknife to cut the umbilical cord. And with a few deft movements, the baby boy was free. He was weak, barely moving. The woman walked swiftly, clearing blockages from the baby's nostrils to help him breathe. She turned to Zen, her face a mask of concentration. Has the baby cried before? She asked. Yes, he cried but suddenly stopped. Zen replied, his voice thick with worry. She nodded. He will be okay. We just need something to wrap him. Zen pulled off his shirt and handed it to her. She wrapped the baby carefully, ensuring he was warm. Zen's thoughts were racing. What about the mother? He asked. Desperation lessened in his voice. The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she asked for water to clean up the woman. Zen fumbled with his bag and produced a bottle of water. She washed the mother gently and they moved her onto a clean wrapper. Thank you, Zen said, his voice breaking with emotion. You just saved lives. The woman nodded, retrieving her bag to continue her journey. Zen, overwhelmed with gratitude, chased after her. May I know your name, please? She stopped and smiled. You may not know me, but I know you. You are the son of Zen Dennis. You are a very kind man. The gods are with you. The gods are with me. Again, Zen muttered to himself, feeling a shiver of something he couldn't quite place. But I still want to know you, please, he insisted. My mother is from this village, but my father is from Oka. Before I forget, if you can get a coconut, put a few drops of coconut water in the baby's mouth. It will help sustain him while his mother recovers. Zen nodded, taking in every word. Okay, but I still want to know exactly where your mother is from in Nimo. My mother is the first daughter of His Royal Highness Oragis II, she replied. Zen's eye widened in shock. He prostrated himself on the ground. You are the daughter of the princess of our kingdom. May you live long. The woman smiled warmly, bid him farewell, and continued on her way. Zen stood up and returned to the woman and her baby, his heart full of gratitude. He sat down beside the sleeping infant. Thank you, Amadioha, for sending a royal princess to help. What could I have done without her? He checked his time and realized it was already 4 o'clock. Time had slipped away while he was lost in the urgency of saving the woman and her child. How will I get this woman out of here before nightfall? He wondered aloud. And where will I take her to? My house is 3 miles away from here and she's unconscious. Even if she weren't, she wouldn't have the strength to walk. Zen sighed, feeling the weight of exhaustion and hunger. He hadn't eaten all day. But you have coconut, a voice whispered. He remembered the woman's advice about the coconut. Rushing to his bag, he retrieved the coconut, knelt beside the baby, and gently dripped the water into his mouth. The baby licked the water eagerly, his tiny body responding to the substance. Shortly after feeding the baby with the coconut water, Zen heard the sound of an approaching vehicle. Amadioha, please touch the driver's hatch to help us, he prayed, hastily organizing his bag. He flagged down the car, his heart pounding with hope. The car, a dusty old van, flowed beside them. The driver didn't stop immediately but slowed down. Zen ran after the car, pleading, please help us, we are stranded. To where? The driver asked. Please, anywhere you can drop us, on or before downtown will be helpful, Zen replied breathlessly. The driver stopped and reversed. Zen quickly picked up the baby and his bag, placing them in the car as soon as it halted. He then hurried back to retrieve the woman. The driver, seeing her condition, stepped out to help. Inside the car, Zen held the woman securely against him, carefully not to let her fall. The driver glanced back. What happened to her? She gave birth and lost a lot of blood, Zen explained. What about the baby? The driver asked. The baby is with us. He was very weak, but he seems to be doing better now, Zen said, trying to keep his voice steady despite his growing anxiety. Zen thought about his journey to meet the oracle. He needed to find a place for the woman and her baby to recover. He silently prayed for guidance, unsure of how to proceed if the worst should happen. The driver interrupted his thought, I will help you to Pentagon Hospital, a hospital downtown. It's about 3 hours drive from here. Zen thanked the driver for his kindness. The journey felt interminable, but they finally reached the hospital. Nurses and doctors rushed out with a stretcher, and the woman was whisked away into the emergency room. One of the nurses holding the baby, and Zen followed close behind, praying silently for the mother's survival. The doctor informed him that the woman needed 2 pints of blood. Zen volunteered to donate. In the lab, after confirming he was a suitable donor, the technician advised him to eat before donating to avoid dizziness. Zen found a nearby restaurant and ordered 2 plates of fufu with okra soup. He ate quickly, the food giving him the strength he needed. Returning to the lab, Zen explained that he was the only available donor. The technician, seeing his determination, decided to take 1 pint first. After the donation, Zen realized the baby hadn't eaten all day. He informed the nurse, who assured him the doctor will examine the mother soon, and asked for baby clothes. Upon inquiring, Zen went out and bought baby items. He bought a tub for the woman, detergent, and a bucket. Exhausted, Zen asked for a place to rest and was allowed to sleep in the private ward. Before he slept, he thanked Amadioha for guiding him through a challenging day and prayed for the woman's recovery. As he drifted into sleep, he had a vivid dream. In his dream, Zen was in a bustling market buying vegetables. He stumbled upon a group of older men arguing over a baby. Most wanted the baby killed, fearing it would anger their god. Zen pleaded with them not to harm the innocent child. They ignored him, viewing him as an outsider. The majority decided the baby must die to purify their land from evil. In desperation, Zen quietly asked one of the elders what crime did the baby had committed to warrant such a fate. There was no response. One of the men roughly picked up the baby, causing it to cry. Zen's heart ached for the child, but he didn't know how to save it. The man carrying the baby began chanting a purification song, heading towards a deserted well. The others followed, chanting in response. When they reached the well, the man raised the crying baby and spoke, "You came from evil. You came with evil. Now you must go back with your evil." The crowd chanted in agreement. As the man prepared to throw the baby into the well, Zen screamed, "Don't kill the innocent baby. He is just a victim of circumstance." Zen woke up with these words on his lips. He realized it was just a dream, but felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. He saw a nurse attending to the woman and rushed over, fearing the worst. She reassured him that the woman was responding well to treatment. Zen thanked her, relieved it was only a nightmare. He sat back, trying to shake off the lingering sadness of the dream. The dream had felt so real, and Zen wondered if it had any connection to the woman and her baby. He couldn't shake the image of the innocent child from his mind, but reminded himself it was just a product of his imagination and the stress of the day. Yet, the sadness lingered, a haunting echo of his fear for the vulnerable mother and the child in his care. What an innocent child. He is just a victim of circumstance. But what about the mother? Maybe she died during delivery. He was so carried away with thoughts of the baby that he forgot what brought him to the hospital. He was distracted by a nurse who came to check on the woman. He quickly stood up when he saw the nurse. "How is she now?" he asked. "Oh, are you awake? She is responding to treatment," said the nurse. "What about the baby?" "The baby is alright. What does he eat?" "We fed him with his mother's breast," the nurse replied. "How?" he asked, puzzled, knowing the woman was unconscious. "It's our duty to ensure the baby eats, and we fed him with his mother's breast. In less than no time, we will feed him again," she explained. "Oh, thank you very much for taking care of them. We came from a far remote village and were too tired to help," Zen explained. "Don't worry, sir. This is our work. Just have your rest. She will be much stronger by dawn." "Please, where can I get water to wash?" Zen asked. "This is a private ward. Everything you need is in here. That's the bathroom over there." She pointed at the door. "The tap is up and running." "Thank you very much," Zen said as he pulled the bucket from under the bed. He wanted to wash his t-shirt, which was used to wrap the baby, and his singlet and trouser, which had blood stains. He remembered the woman's delivery wrapper, which he had carefully put in a separate section of his bag. He opened his bag, and there was a very bad smell coming from it. He quickly zipped up the bag. He brought out all his other items, except his clothes, because he had to wear them after taking his bed. He went to the bathroom, washed both the clothes and his bag. He took his bed and changed into his spare clothes. I have never seen a thing like this, he said to himself. I used to hear women lose blood during childbirth, but I never knew they used to lose so much blood. I have 3 wives, but I have never seen a drop of blood from any of them during childbirth, or even witnessed where the clothes are being washed. But look at me, washing the childbirth clothes of a strange woman filled with so much blood. The native nurses who deliver my wife's children help to do the washing in a segregated place. He shrugged his shoulder. Women are suffering in childbirth, really. Zen observed his time and it was 2 a.m. I need to go back to bed, he said to himself as he walked up to check on the woman and her baby. He carefully observed the woman and for the very first time noticed she was very fair and pretty. He looked at the baby and immediately remembered the baby in his dream. Could there be a connection between this baby and the baby I saw in my dream? He mumbled to himself. Zen was filled with thoughts of the recent occurrences that he forgot the journey that was facing him. He went back to bed and lay down again to sleep. In the morning, the nurse had fed the baby very early. The woman was awake, better and stronger than yesterday, but she couldn't talk yet. She was just giving signs and signals with her hand, her mouth opening and closing. She waved her greetings at Zen when he woke up. Zen sat up and returned her wave. How are you today? Asked Zen. She nodded her head as a sign that she was fine. Don't worry, you will be okay soon, said Zen. She nodded her head again. Zen bent his head and began to wonder how long it would take this woman to recover and be able to identify herself. My family will be expecting my return today. What am I going to do now? But wait, this woman hasn't eaten since yesterday, he said to himself. He stood up and went to meet the nurses. Good morning, nurse, Zen greeted. Good morning, sir. Has she been able to eat anything? He asked. Breakfast is served by 7 a.m. It's almost time. They will soon attend to her, said one of the nurses. Before Zen got back to their private ward, she had already been served a cup of tea and some slices of bread with fried egg. She beckoned to Zen to come and join her. Thank you very much. Go ahead and eat, Zen said. He sat on his bed and began to think, how am I sure this man is not dumb by nature? How would I be able to identify her husband and family since she can't express herself? Can she find her way if I take her back to the spot where I picked her from? Her husband and family would be looking for her seriously. The forest was at the center boundary of 4 towns. Those towns had access to the bushes, but none could claim ownership because it was an evil forest. The forest was where those towns and other towns far and near threw abominable things and people who committed abominations or had abominable disease. People with bellies that suddenly began to increase outrageously is an abominable disease in the land. They were thrown there. Also, people who practice witchcraft were tied and thrown far into the forest where wild animals devoured their remains. Even twins and children who grew teeth in the womb were considered abomination. He was still thinking when the nurses came in to carry the baby. We want to birth the baby, said one of the nurses. It's alright, responded Zen. One carried the baby while the other picked up the baby's clothes and followed her. A few minutes later, they brought back the baby and woke her mother to feed her. They helped her to sit up. One held her while the other adjusted the bed settings to make her relax. They ensured the baby was comfortable as the mother began to feed her. Can you hold her now? One of the nurses asked. She nodded her head. Okay, please hold him firmly, the nurse said, standing by to watch her feed the baby. A few minutes later, the baby was gone. The nurse carried the baby and laid her in the cradle, then helped the woman lie down and readjusted the bed settings. Zen had been avoiding eye contact with the woman, who kept gazing at him while feeding her baby. Who knows what is going on in her mind now, he thought, as he moved his gaze away from her. He sighed, wiped his face, and lay down facing the ceiling. I am going to leave this woman here and continue with my journey. I will come back later for her bills, he murmured to himself. He stood up and went to talk with the nurses. I need permission to go on an emergency trip to Umweri, he said. Are you coming back today? Asked one of the nurses. I am not sure about today, but definitely by tomorrow. Okay, hold on, sir. We will give you feedback shortly. She stood up and left, returning later with a booklet in her hand. She handed it over to the head nurse, who opened it to read. Sir, You have to deposit the sum of 5,000 before going, and also leave some money with the woman in case there is a need to buy any baby item. It's alright, Zen said, reaching into his pocket and pulled out some money. He handed over 5,500 to her. Sir, please sign here. She pointed to a line in the receipt booklet, and he signed. Go well, sir. Don't worry about your wife. We will take good care of her. Thank you. I am grateful, said Zen. He returned to the private ward, and the woman was asleep again. Thank goodness she is asleep. I can live without having to explain myself, he said. He picked up his bag and left his wet clothes and quietly closed the door. Out in the street, Zen flagged down a taxi. Can you take me to a commercial motor park where I can find a car going to Umweri? Yes, come in, said the driver. He entered and the car zoomed off. At the commercial motor park, he boarded a bus to Umweri. Umweri was a 3-hour journey from Onitsha. When he arrived at the bus stop, he began to ask for the directions to the oracle. It took him 2 hours on foot. Upon arrival, the chief priest assistant told him that the oracle doesn't speak on naked days. Zen, being ignorant of this, tried to explain himself to the oracle assistant, but the oracle assistant couldn't help him. He was still explaining to Zen that oracle can never speak on naked days when the chief priest asked him to allow Zen in. The chief priest began to make some enchantments. Oracle doesn't speak on naked days. He chanted several songs before announcing, the gods have decided to grant you favor. He then presented a wooden tray to Zen, who opened his bag, took out a parceled kola nut, and placed it on the tray. The chief priest resumed chanting and suddenly stopped. Son, you must go home. I can't fight the battle of the gods. My role is to avoid standing in their way. Their eyes are on your family. Among your children, you have a gifted child. Treat that child with care and raise her in truth. You are favored by the gods. That's exactly why I came, Zen responded. My wife had a dream where 2 men were fighting over one of my children. The chief priest continued to chant again, and when he stopped, he turned to Zen. Son, you must go home. I can't help you. The battle is the battle of gods. Do not dare to interfere in the matters concerning the gods. My only advice to you is to listen to your child and also listen to your heart. The gods are with you. Confused and seeking further guidance, Zen asked what he should do. The chief priest began to chant again, but the oracle did not speak. He advised him to go home. Listen to the child and seek understanding in every wisdom. Like I said, do not interfere with matters that concern the gods. Go home, the gods are with you. Then paid his respect to the priest and left, pondering the priest's words. Who are these gods everyone talks about? The gods are happy with me. You are favored by the gods. But why would they fight over my family? I am confused. What should I do now? He asked aloud. It was already nightfall, and Zen had a long way to go. He met a man on his way. Good evening, sir, he greeted. Good evening, the man replied. Do you have a guest house in this community? I am a stranger and came to consult the oracle, but couldn't finish on time. No, we don't have guest house here. Where are you from? The man asked. I came from Onitsha. Hey, Onitsha is more than 5 hours from here, and it's almost nightfall. Hurry to get to the bus stop first. You might be lucky to find a bus to the commercial motor park. It will be more convenient to sleep in a motor park than to sleep on a pathway, the man advised. Alright, sir, Zen said, increasing his pace. As he walked, he heard the sound of an approaching vehicle. It was dark, and the pathway was bushy but motorable. He flew down the motor park, a flashing jeep, but the driver didn't stop. The owner must be a very rich man, Zen thought. A few minutes later, another car came speeding with its full headlights on. Zen flagged it down, but the driver only honked and continued driving. Disappointed, he wondered about the chief priest's words. The gods are with you. The priest's words echoed in his mind. If the gods are with me, why won't they make this car stop for me? Because you don't know what the gods have in mind for you, a voice replied. Zen couldn't bother to look for who spoke to him because he has been familiar with this invisible voice. Whatever they have in mind, my safety should be their priority, he sighed, continuing in his hurried walk. A few moments later, he heard a sound growing louder as he approached. He didn't bother to check it out. Focus on getting to the motor park before it got too dark. Why not check out that sound? The voice suggested again. No, I can't. Whatever it is, it can sort out itself. It's already dark. Zen kept hearing the sound fading and fading as he walked on. But Zen did not respond. This place is strange to have such a sound. Don't you think so? The voice persisted. But Zen didn't respond. You need to follow your heart, the voice urged. Deep down in his heart, he wanted to know what the sound is all about. But he kept pushing the thought away. This is nightfall. I can't do otherwise, he insisted, moving on. He had gone a long distance when he suddenly remembered the chief priest's word. Listen to her and listen to your heart. He quickly turned and ran back to the source of the noise. It was dark and he didn't have a flashlight, but he could see a little. He found the jeep that had refused to stop for him. Oh, it ran into the bush, he said. But why can't the driver come out and find the solution? The engine was running and the windows were closed with the air conditioner on. He peered through the window and saw the driver bent face down on the steering wheel. He tried to open the door, but it was locked. He knocked hard several times, hoping the driver would respond, but the man didn't move. How would I be able to open this door now? Standing alone in the dimly lit bushy area, he realized that help might not come anytime soon. The only option is to break the screen, he thought, but quickly wondered where he could find a strong object to shatter the window. Why not check the other doors? An instinct voice whispered in his mind. Quickly, Zen checked the other doors, and to his relief, one of the back doors was unlocked. He entered the car, unpinned the driver's door, and then stepped out to open it. He pulled the man out of the driver's seat and laid him gently on the ground, noticing the foam around the man's mouth. The sight was alarming, but Zen remembered the herb he had in his bag. He swiftly brought it out and squeezed the water into the man's mouth, praying it might work some miracle as it worked for the woman. When he was done, Zen lifted the man back into the car, laying him across the back seat, and then retrieved his bag from the roadside. I hope I can drive this car, he muttered, eyeing the vehicle's controls. It's been over 30 years since I drove last, backward when there was only manual gears. I just pray this is a manual gear. However, as he mounted the driver's seat and inspected the car, he discovered it was an automatic. Well, automatic should be easier, he reassured himself. He switched on the car inner lights, adjusted the mirrors. On trying to reverse the vehicle back to the road, it wasn't moving. He applied some force, but finally he succeeded on getting back on the road. Amadioha, I thank you, he murmured with gratitude. Zen had learned to drive during the colonial era, and he had been the youngest driver with a license. But since the departure of the colonial masters, he hadn't had a car of his own, and as a result had no opportunity to drive again. Now, as he familiarized himself with the automatic gear, he gradually increased his speed. Where will I take this man now? Zen wondered aloud. He was unfamiliar with the town and unsure where to find a hospital. Taking the man to Onitsha seemed like a risky option due to the distance. But then he noticed the man's light movement. I think I should risk it and drive to Onitsha. It's just about controlling the steering, the brake, and the throttle. This should be easier than the manual gear. Determined, he accelerated, gradually pushing the speedometer from 80 to 100, then 120, and finally 140. Zen reached Onitsha under 3 hours. Upon arrival, he flagged down a taxi. I need you to lead me to Pentagon Hospital on Lagos Street in Fege. I am not familiar with this part of Onitsha, Zen requested. You will pay me 50 naira, the driver replied. I will pay you 30, Zen bargained. Sir, please pay me 50 naira. You are a rich man, driving this kind of car. Let's go. There's no time to waste, Zen urged. The taxi driver led him to the hospital, where Zen quickly called for assistance. Nurses rushed out with a stretcher and carried the man inside. Thank you, sir, the taxi driver said as Zen handed him a 50 naira note. Zen followed the nurses inside. A nurse approached him. Your wife is stronger now, but she has been sobbing. I think she misses you. I will see her right away, Zen responded. He gently knocked on the door and waited before entering. The woman tried to sit up upon seeing him. Don't bother sitting up, just relax, Zen said softly. How are you now? She nodded slightly, making a faint sound. Good. I am grateful to Amadioha that you are getting stronger. I embarked on a mini travel, but I am back. Let me see if I can get something to eat, he said. Zen observed his time. It was already late. Have you eaten? He asked. She nodded again. All right, he said. I need to find something to eat myself. I haven't eaten since morning. Just as he stood to leave, the nurse reappeared. The doctor wants to see you, sir, she informed him. Where can I find him? Zen asked, following her to the doctor's office. Good evening, sir, the doctor greeted, though it was already midnight. Good evening, doctor, Zen responded, taking a seat. How is your wife? The doctor inquired. She's better today, Zen replied. She's responding well to treatment. But tell me, does she have any speech impediment? The doctor asked. Zen paused. Actually, she's not my wife. I found her yesterday in a terrible state. She was bleeding heavily and her baby was already born. I couldn't just leave her there, so I brought her here. The doctor listened intently. You are a good man, Zen. You have done something truly noble by saving her life. Most people wouldn't have bothered. Zen nodded, but the doctor continued. I also want to ask about the other patient you brought in. We need his medical history to treat him properly. Zen sighed, shaking his head. I don't know him either, doctor. I found him in a car, unconscious, on my way back here. I managed to get him out and drove him to the hospital, but I know nothing about him. The doctor stood, impressed. You are a good man, he said, extending his hand to shake Zen's. The world needs more people like you. The man had been placed on oxygen. We are currently running some tests on him, but having his previous medical history will help us achieve a faster result. We need to find his family as quickly as possible. The doctor explained. Go to his car and check if there are documents that can give us information about him. This will help us locate his people quickly. If there is no contact info, we will have to notify the police. Thank you, doctor, Zen responded as he stood to leave the office. As he stepped out, a wave of dizziness washed over him. I haven't eaten since morning, he muttered. I just pray I will find something to eat. It's already midnight. He made his way to the guest house and asked one of the security men, can I still get something to eat at this time? I guess so, but let me verify, the security man replied before stepping inside to inquire. Moment later, he returned. You can go in, sir. Okay, thank you, Zen said, heading inside and ordering 2 plates of fufu and egusi soup. Sorry, sir, we don't have egusi at the moment, the waiter informed him. What soup do you have? Zen asked, a bit disappointed. We have okra and vegetable soup, the waiter replied. Vegetable will be fine, Zen decided. Sure, sir. I'll be at your service shortly, the waiter said before disappearing. He returned 5 minutes later with Zen's meal. We apologize for the delay, he said as he served the food. No worries, Zen replied. Please, can I get a bottle of Coke? Yes, sir. The waiter promptly returned with a drink. As Zen ate, his mind was full of thoughts. Where could I have slept if I hadn't met this man? What also would have been his fate if I hadn't gone back to check out that sound? But why do all these things keep happening to me? Problems that can overwhelm anyone. Why me? His heart sank as he thought of his family. They were expecting me back home this evening. But look at me now, stranded and hopeless. An invisible voice interrupted his thoughts. What makes you think you are hopeless? Because I don't know when I will get out of this mess, Zen replied inwardly. Is it really a mess? Yes, it is, Zen argued. How will I explain about a woman who can't speak to identify herself because she's dumb? All the money I have with me is spent on her, and I don't know what the balance will be. And where will I get her to when she's discharged? The money I'm spending now was meant for my family's upkeep for next week. Am I not in a mess already? You are just sowing a good seed, the voice reassured him. And besides, the woman is not dumb. How could you have located her if not that you heard her voice? It's true. I located her because I heard her screaming for help. Zen was still on this thought when the waiter's voice jolted him back to his reality. Sir, are you done? Can I clear the table? Yes, I am done. Go ahead, Zen said, surprised to see his plate empty. He hadn't even realized he had finished eating. How much is my bill? He asked. Your bill is 70 naira, the waiter replied. Zen handed him the money and left, heading back to the hospital. With the help of the hospital security, Zen was able to search the man's car. Among the documents, he found the man's identity. His name is Joe Osakwe, residing at number 2 Shanahan Street, Port Harcourt. It was already midnight by the time Zen returned to the hospital room. The woman was asleep when he quietly entered, carefully not to disturb her. He set his items down softly. Then he went into the bathroom to shower. Afterwards, he knelt to pray. Thank you, Amadioha, for the privilege of being alive. Thank you for the gift of good health. Thank you for my family's peace. I have had enough troubles already. Shield me from more. I will not die in my sleep. Preserve the lives of the sick ones and heal them. Keep my family safe. Please, Amadioha, answer my prayers. With that, Zen rose and quietly lay down on his bed, quickly falling asleep. Early the next morning, as Zen prepared for his journey to Port Harcourt, the doctors came to check on the woman. How are you, madam? One of them asked. The woman nodded and waved a greeting. Can you stand now? The doctor inquired. She signaled that she could stand but couldn't walk. Let's help her walk, another doctor suggested. A nurse supported her on one side while the doctor held her on the other. They lifted her feet, but she trembled. Unable to move her legs, another nurse began lifting and lowering each leg, helping her to take small steps. They managed to move her about 4 feet before turning back, finding the return trip easier. Her legs are more flexible now, observed by the nurse assisting with her movement. Good. Ensure she exercises her legs every 3 hours. The doctor instructed. If she shows more improvement by tomorrow, we will consider discharging her. Okay, the nurses responded as they helped her back to the bed. The doctors then checked her vitals. Her blood pressure isn't coming down despite changing her medications, one of the doctors noted with concern. I suspected she's under serious emotional stress, which is keeping her blood pressure high. But sadly, she can't express herself, the other doctor added. Zen, overhearing this conversation, felt even more burdened. What do I do with this woman? How will I get out of this situation? Where will I take her? Zen boarded a bus to Port Harcourt, his mind still heavy with the thoughts about the woman he left behind at the hospital. The journey was long, but he arrived before noon. After making some enquiries, he was able to locate the office of Joe Osakwe. My name is Zen, and I came all the way from Onitsha. I was sent from Pentagon Hospital to seek anyone who can identify Joe Osakwe, who is currently undergoing medical treatment at the hospital. Zen explained to the receptionist, who quickly informed the company's manager. The manager wasted no time. He immediately dispatched a staff to inform Joe's wife, while another employee was assigned to take Joe to the canteen and served him anything he wanted to eat. Zen was grateful for the hospitality, but remained anxious about the situation back at the hospital. In less than an hour, Mrs. Osakwe arrived at the office, panic evident in her eyes. She had been sobbing ever since she received the news about her husband. What happened to my husband? She asked frantically as he rushed into the reception to meet Zen. Madam, Zen began gently. A good Samaritan brought your husband to the hospital last night. His condition isn't too bad, but he needs someone to take care of him at the hospital. Let's not waste any more time. Onitsha is about 4 hours from here. The journey back to Onitsha was tense. The driver sped as if Joe's life depended on it, and Mrs. Joe didn't utter a word of complaint about the speed. Her heart was racing with worry, and all she could think about was seeing her husband again. In less than 4 hours, they arrived at Pentagon Hospital. Back in the hospital, a nurse escorted Mrs. Joe Osakwe to see her husband in the ward. Joe was still on oxygen, and the sight of him in that state brought fresh tears to her eyes. She hurried to his side, overwhelmed by emotion. After ensuring that Mrs. Joe was with her husband, Zen returned to the ward where the woman was staying. As he opened the door, he found her breastfeeding her baby. She looked up and greeted him with a warm smile. How are you today? Zen asked, stepping closer. She nodded, her smile widening to confirm she was doing better. Your face looks brighter today. I hope you are feeling stronger, he asked, genuinely concerned. Again, she nodded, signaling that she was indeed improving. That's good. We will talk more later, Zen said, offering her a reassuring smile before leaving the ward to check on Mr. Joe Osakwe. If you are followed to this point, kindly subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell so that you will know when we publish interesting stories like this.